On today's episode, we're going to talk about pets. When is it okay to put them down? Is it okay to put them down? How do the vets feel about this?
We need to hear from you vets out there. So listen in.
Let's talk about death, baby. Let's talk about grief and mourning. Is it argumental or existential? What's it mean to me? Let's talk about death.
Hi, I'm Benny Cabal, and I'm a funeral professional.
And I'm Nicholas Cabal, a psychologist.
Hey, Nick, let's talk about death.
Let's do it.
All right, Doc. So we're going to talk about this. So this might be pretty tough for some of you listeners out there, especially if you just lost a pet. So from the bottom of Doc and I's heart, being both complete dog lovers, sorry for the loss of your pet. But we're going to talk about today the topic of when to put your dog down, the euthanasia part of it when it comes to your pet.
When is it time to put the pet down?
When is it time to put it down? I have had if you want to so call it, the honor of putting my dog down at 6 years old, and it absolutely tore my heart in two. I know, Doc, you've experienced putting a dog down too, so we can delve into this a little bit. But I remember, I'll just do my cute little story here. I remember taking Winifred Capal to the vet because she literally was urinating blood and wasn't standing anymore. And it was quick, like within 24 hours, a healthy 6-year-old dog literally was just at the vet, got checked, no issues, to taking her to the emergency vet because, of course, whenever a dog has a problem, it's never on a Monday through Friday. It is always on a Saturday or Sunday. So I had to go to the special clinic, and I remember they were like, okay, and this is another thing too. Let's talk about just little quick tidbit here. How expensive that is, how quick those expenses go up. I remember they were like, oh, we could take a blood test, or we could take x-rays, but x-rays are like $300 for an x-ray, and the blood test is like $50 or something. And I was like, well, then why don't we take the blood? And then if it,
it's hard because you fall in love. You fall in love with these animals. And I know some people that I've worked with in therapy who I think some of these people, their pets become their children. I don't know how else to say that. There's a connection, a very strong connection with a lot of people and their pets. And it's hard because in the right circumstances, money shouldn't be an issue. However, with that being said, and the way the economy is and how a lot of us unfortunately are living, money is a problem.
Well, and here's the thing about money too, and I'll get into this because this will explain it too. It's not necessarily the amount of money. It's the amount of, I could pay all this money and nothing and give this dog one more month of still pain. You know what I mean? So it's this tricky part where you're put in this, because dogs can't tell you too, right? Your pets can't tell you like, yeah, please make that decision for me because so you have no idea what they want. But I remember that. And then I remember they took an x-ray and they found like 16 tumors inside of her. And I remember the vet said to me, we don't have a surgeon here that can do it. The only surgeon is in East Lansing. So you could drive your pet an hour and a half, but I can't promise you'll get an actual, you won't actually be taken in because it's like first come, first serve. So basically he's like, you could drive an hour and a half with this dog in excruciating pain for a chance that they might not even be able to get her in. And he said there's like a 60% chance that she won't make it through the surgery. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't want to see this pet in pain anymore. And you could tell, like, when you have a pet and they're giving you the droopy eyes, like, I am not happy. I am not here. I please do whatever you need to do to take this pain away. And I just remember they were like, I was like, no, I made the decision. And they were asking me, okay, we could take her in the back. I'm like, no. I want to hold her. I want to be here. I want her to know that she had me here till the end. And I just remember, like, for me, it was a visceral moment of her ear going from pink to gray. And that's when I knew right away. And it was so interesting because Doc and I have talked about this. We struggle with expressing outwardly our grief. But when it comes to those extreme moments, it's intense. It's very intense anger that I remember, like, punching the steering wheel, and I held Winnie all the way home because they were like, "Oh, we can, cremate her," and I'm like, "No. We bury our pets in our backyard.
We have a system
we
here."
have Indian burial ground of
Right.
a pet cemetery.
Pet cemetery
in
in the backyard.
But honestly, it was a wonderful experience because she didn't die alone. I was there with her, and she didn't have to be in pain anymore, in my opinion. Now, some of you listeners could be like, "Well, you could have taken that chance. You could have drove the 2 hours up to Lansing and maybe got in, and did the surgery and gave her a chance." And I'm not saying that that's right, wrong, or indifferent. But I do find that there comes a point where, and we've all seen them, or if you haven't, it's hard to watch when you see a pet that can't go outside on their own anymore. They're blind. They have their tongue sticking out of their mouth. They can't hear anymore. They can't go up the stairs. They can't do their normal house things that they do. And that's terrifying. And it's also sad. It's very, very sad because, as we know, pets don't have, especially dogs and cats, they don't live long expectancies. So we get so attached to them for such a short time. And there's unconditional love, Doc. We've talked about this. That's the thing that pets can give that humans can't even do a lot of the time. And that's actually be loyal and give 100% of their love and attention to their owner. And it's not just dogs and cats. It's lizards and fish and
Well, I go back. I
birds
go
and-
back to the difference between surviving and living. And as humans, most of us at a certain point in our lives can make that decision, whether or not we are surviving or just living. Pets can't. They can't talk, right? So I think it's really, I always go back when we're talking about this. I had a pet ferret, and for a while I had quite a few ferrets. And her name was Bella, and she was a beautiful ferret. She was an awesome ferret.
Awesome ferret.
Awesome ferret. And problem with Bella was about a year of having her, she was probably farm bred and all that fun stuff. So, like, she got really sick and tumors and all that stuff. And I literally had to hand feed her for like 3-4 months. And there came to a point where I asked the question of, like, is this a life? Is this not for me, but for Bella? Like, I'm literally having to pick her up, which it looked like she was in pain when I did that. And then, of course, nobody likes to be force fed.
Yeah.
And then you'd get these glimpses of hope, right? You'd get these glimpses of this pet ferret getting a little bit more weight and getting a little bit more active. And then there would be a decline. And then I would get back to the hand feeding, and then there would be another decline. And then there was a point where, like, I literally every day, 3 times a day, was hand feeding this ferret, and with syringes and all that fun stuff, and preparing her her meals. And I just got to the point where and then the other thing was, like, she wasn't living. Like, she literally was just sleeping. And then I'd have to pick her up, and you could tell she was in pain, feed her, and then put her back so that she could sleep again. So it was just like, is this, you know what I mean? There's that question, right? And that's where it gets really, really tough as a pet owner, because obviously the animal themselves can't tell you, right? You can't be like, hey, Bella, what are you thinking? Like, how you dealing? How you coping? What's your attitude, right? All you can see is their facial expressions. And when you spend that much time with a pet, you start to read them, right? You could tell when they're in pain. You could tell when they're happy. You could tell when they're sad. And it just gets to the point where you, as a human owner, have to make a tough decision. And I will say that it's never an easy decision. And that's why I don't judge people for what they decide to do when they're trying their best to take care of their pet.
So, Doc, I'll put this in a clinical way. So, if a patient came in and asked you, Doc, I'm really struggling with this decision to put my cat down. So how would you therapize? I always like when we use that word. Therapize that situation.
I would just try to understand.
Okay.
I would just try to understand where that person is with that pet. What are the circumstances why they're keeping, Bella, or I'm trying to think of Sparky or Fruit Loops alive,
Fruit
right?
Loops. Can just
So,
see that dog right now.
I always wanted a white dog named Fruit Loops. I might eventually have that. But anyway, so it just makes sense. Fruit Loops are colorful, and it's a white dog. And anyways, besides the point. But like, yeah, I would try to sit with them, try to understand, try to, obviously normalize what they're going through, try to understand where they're at, and then I would ask maybe some confrontation questions, which would be like, who are we keeping this pet alive for? Right? Are we keeping this pet alive for you? For the memory that who they were, or what that pet was like, that personality? Or are we keeping it alive because we really do truly believe that they're going to get better? And I think that's a hard question, because like Benny was explaining, when you go to a vet at that age, right, when they're getting to that point, knock on wood, I have a 14-year-old beagle right now. Like, I got an older dog. Like, and the reality is that she's not going to get any younger, right? She's not going to wake up tomorrow and be a spunky 4-year-old dog again. So it's accepting that there is changes going on, and it's accepting that there is going to come a point where we're going to have to make that tough decision with Josie. Josie's my pet beagle. So again, like, I guess what I'm saying to everybody listening out there, this is not an easy, yes or no, and it's not a dichotomous thinking situation. This is where are you at? What's the circumstances? Because if the dog is in pain, or the cat is in pain, or the reptile is in pain, right? It's tough as an owner to watch that day in, day out. It's truly not only painful for the animal or reptile or fish, but it's also painful for the owner, because the owner understands that there's coming to a point where we cannot relieve that pain any longer. So what do we do? And that's a tough question.
I think there is a specific person or persons we need to address, and that's the veterinarians themselves. Do you think they take home that pressure of putting down animals all the time?
Most vets are animal lovers, right? That makes sense.
So that's got to be hard
right?
for them.
But again, I think it's how you frame it. Is it you're healing them, or are you executioning them?
Well, it
right?
just goes back to another conversation, because do they take an oath to do no harm to animals?
Again, that was the definition of harm.
So here's going back to you, because we've talked about this in the euthanasia.
Yeah.
Are you, as a doctor, causing harm?
It's a great question. I think if you're doing it, so here comes the other part of this, right? I think there's an ethical section of this and a moral section of this, morality, right? So if we're talking ethically, so like the job wise, if you're following the laws of your job and your state and the whatever the embodying, like for me it's the APA, the American Psychological Association, puts down rules and we have to follow them. I think is if you follow them to the best of your ability,
then ethically you're sound.
Then ethically you did nothing wrong.
Okay.
Right? So, but it's a great question, because technically you're, in some of our states now, you're basically signing off on killing someone.
Yeah, no, I know.
Which is
talked
odd,
about that,
right?
It's just a full circle into, and listen to that episode if you haven't, the euthanasia.
But it brings up a good point, though, right? Because I think we're coming to a community
moral dilemma.
No, I think we're coming to a community where I think animals are having a lot more rights.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like,
well, they're coming up on the totem pole,
right? Well, and I think they should have. Like, I think some of the things that we used to do to pets. Don't get me wrong, some of it was survival, and we had to do it. I always remember watching this there was this documentary about this person, and I can't remember. It was like the coldest parts of Russia or something, and they breed their dogs is basically bodyguards for them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that how they train them is by making sure that they're okay to be in like freezing temperatures for a
Right.
long period of time, and that they're able to get caught up in a trap and still get out of it and stuff,
And step in front of a bear if it came.
yeah, and basically attack the bear so that the person can survive. And to me, some people would look at it as that's pet abuse, right? That's we shouldn't be doing that. But then again, if I was living out in the northern part of Russia and I had to trap and fish every day to afford my family or take care of my family, like, what are you going to do?
I saw those, like the cool like igloos where they make a special igloo for the dog.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because the guy that was talking, basically, he had an igloo. Actually, it wasn't an igloo. It was like basically a pit dug out on the side of the house, that the house warmth would actually warm that little area for the dog. But he wasn't allowed. He basically said, I wasn't allowed to bring my dog in
That's part of the
because
training.
that's part of their training, is they have to be able to survive. And figure that out. But again, I digress. ADHD went off there. But like,
no, but I would like, if there's a veterinarian out there that is listening to this, we would be very, very interested in your opinion of this. Do you take it home with you, or is it something that, no, I did the best that I could for this poor animal that's suffering?
Right.
So, but you wonder, like, that's something I wondered about, especially because, like you said, a lot of veterinarians are like, they grow up like from day 4, like, I love animals, I love everything about them, I want to be a veterinarian. And then they're like, hey, this is part of the job, and they're like, oh,
well. And I think to kind of wrap this up before the Q&As, before we do the Q&As, I think it's important too, right? Is that I would imagine that most veterinarians are going to try to prevent killing the pet. So they're going to give you other options and talk about, like, ultimately they know it's not their decision, but they're going to try to probably persuade you into, like, there is options here. Like, we can do this, we can do that. But just like a medical doctor, at a certain point, they're going to look at you and say, there's not much we can do here.
Well, that's a question. Can you decline? Can a veterinary decline?
I don't know.
Putting down a pet?
I would imagine they could if they feel like there's no reason to do it.
I'm sure there's more than one person, but I wonder if there's veterinarians out there that won't do it.
Send us vets out there. Send us some stories so that we can get a better understanding of what subjective experience it is being a veterinarian and how you deal with that. That would be great. I'd love to read that. All
right, Doc, hit the button, because it's time to go into the Q&As, baby.
Q&A. Everyone loves that Q&A.
Q&As, Doc. Here we go.
Ask away. Fire away.
All right, here we go. Doc, here is the question. My dog was only 1.5 years old. My Frenchie had a horrible seizure today and has horrible brain damage from a 109 temp. He's basically brain dead. We believe he's going to pass either tonight or tomorrow morning. Do you have any words of wisdom to help me cope with his death? I will miss him so much. Frenchie.
Yeah. I would imagine that there's a lot of grief associated with that, especially if the little pupper-doo was very close to you. How do you cope with death? That's a great, I think you do it to the best of your ability. You find out what works. But I think starting off, because this is so fresh, it sounds like for you, I go to the sea of grief, right? Sleep, eat, exercise, or move. Acknowledge the pain, acknowledge that you're grieving. Don't try to hide it. You don't need to. Let the tears flow. Try to do as healthy self-care things you possibly can. Maybe make a scrapbook of the old Frenchie do. Or, do some sort of tradition for this. I always think about, like, we have stockings made for our puppy dogs. And I always thought about, like, what do you do with the stocking after, my 2 dogs are Masha and Josie. Like, what happens when something happens to go to Masha and Josie? Like, to me, I still feel like you hang them up, because those memories will always be there with you. Because shoot, for even like Winnie, he was talking about his puppy dog, Winnie, that was 6 year old. We all were attached to that dog. It wasn't even my dog. But yeah, I think what you do is you find a community. You find your community, whether that's your family or friends or acquaintances, or if you don't have those, there's some really cool nonprofits out there that could be helpful. And you grieve and allow yourself to grieve. And then if it gets overwhelming and it gets to the point where you're not living, you're just surviving, get some help. There's some really good grief, and maybe I'm a little biased here, but there's a lot of good grief therapists out there. Go find one. They would love to help you. So what we do. So
my small, it's gonna be very short here because I think this is the most important thing that I could suggest. My suggestion is you pick up that dog and you hold that dog while the warmth is still there. You really just be with that dog until the end, because just like humans, dogs don't want to die alone. They want to be with their human. They want to be with their best friend. And we don't know, even though basically brain dead, we don't know how much can be still,
well, we know
out.
At least in humans, so I would imagine it's pretty similar in pets. Hearing is normally the last thing to go. So
take
talk
your
to
time.
him.
Hold on to Frenchie and enjoy the time you have with him.
God, I wish we knew the name of the puppy.
Well, he said my Frenchie, but it could be my Frenchie,
my
the
Frenchie
dog,
bulldog.
or was his name Frenchie?
Well, either way, Frenchie, I hope you're living it up.
Yeah,
bone after bone up in heaven.
You crossed that rainbow bridge. All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to close up shop here. Just want to tell you, if you are a veterinarian or if you're dealing with a pet loss, or maybe you just went through putting your pet down, write us with your thoughts, your comments, anything that can get us keep talking about these concepts. We really appreciate your words out there, and you can write those to letstalkaboutdeathpod@gmail.com. Share us with your friends, send us out there on the Spotify's and the Apples and all those podcasting streams. Like us, review us, 5-star us. We love it. We love it.
Love.
And as always, if you are not talking about death,
you are not living.